Okay, so a few days ago, a friend and I went to see The Rise of Skywalker in theaters. I'm sure no introduction is needed by now. The Last of Skywalker being the last movie in the Star Wars sequel trilogy, also known as the last movie in the Star Wars triple trilogy, as they're kind of calling this mega saga now. Okay, so the movie is about a year after The Last Jedi. The Resistance is on the run, but they're organizing a counterattack against the First Order. Basically, Rey is off doing some training without Luke, but under Leia, interestingly enough. I'll get to that in a moment. And meanwhile, Kylo Ren is chasing the voice of the Emperor. Now, if you've seen the trailers, it's probably not a surprise to you. Yes, they brought the Emperor back. Quite frankly, I'm a little bit sick of him. But basically, the Emperor has somehow hidden a massive fleet on this lost Sith world, and basically is going to give it to Kylo Ren and the First Order to use to annihilate anything that doesn't bow down to him, on the condition that basically Kylo Ren hands the First Order / Final Order, we'll just call it the New Empire, over to the now cloned and reincarnated Emperor Palpatine. Meanwhile, Rey is grappling with her past once again, and this time we actually do find out who her parents are after The Last Jedi completely dropped that thread for no reason whatsoever. And here's where the spoiler comes in. Apparently she is Emperor Palpatine's granddaughter. So long and short of it is space battles ensue, lightsaber battles plenty ensue, in the midst of all these showdowns to stop the Emperor from coming back and taking over the galaxy. That's basically the story in a nutshell. Now, to be totally honest with you, as much as I am a Star Wars fan, I've had very mixed feelings about the sequel movies, and Rise of Skywalker was no exception. And it's been a very consistent pattern with the three of them for me. I usually like the spectacle enough that I liked it for me the first 12 to 24 hours after I first saw them, and then very quickly didn't really like them. And now I'm at the point where I'm not even sure if I care whether or not I see any of them again. So, okay, in this instance, I can't completely get on the case of J.J. Abrams and his collaborators, because in this instance, it was kind of known beforehand that there were problems behind the scenes. I'm not exactly sure what was going on with Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm, or maybe even some higher-ups at Disney, but it seems like the new Star Wars movies under the new management have had a bit of a track record for treating directors like a meat grinder. It's kind of well known by now that Solo had replaced its original directors with Ron Howard after shooting the original movie. Apparently Rogue One had some issues with its director as well, and it was very well known that on episode 9 it was originally going to be directed by Colin Trevorrow, who is still credited with the story for this movie. And apparently he and Disney did not get along. He and Disney / Lucasfilm did not get along, and he was jettisoned in favor of J.J. Abrams coming back, who no doubt had a very compressed schedule to deal with to try to get this final movie out of the box. And add to that, I don't doubt, is the fact that whatever threads Abrams set up in The Force Awakens were basically dropped during The Last Jedi. I mean, the Knights of Ren are not seen or mentioned at all in The Last Jedi. The thing with Rey's parents is barely discussed, and is basically hand waved away. And to be honest with you, it's the sort of stuff that kind of sticks me in the middle in terms of the fan controversy regarding the sequel movies, or to a certain extent the newer Star Wars movies in general. There are a lot of people out there who, quite frankly, have like a kind of derangement syndrome against these new movies just for simply existing. Then there are people who hate these movies for completely ideological reasons, apparently just now realizing that the good guys in Star Wars are very left-wing. Positives. To be fair to it, it definitely delivers on a big spectacle. I've always thought that the acting in these movies was very good. I've never understood why people were bothered by it. The actors are all very engaging. They're all very believable. I'm honestly not sure what else people want. The dialogue is at least natural sounding most of the time. A big problem I've had with the other sequel movies was Kylo Ren. I mean, as much as I like the way Adam Driver plays him, I could not stand the way that Kylo Ren is written in a lot of these movies. I personally have a tendency to call him Darth Emo in Force Awakens and The Last Jedi because he just comes off as this whiny little bitch who just hates everything for no reason at all. And I'm very glad that they got away from that in The Rise of Skywalker, and not just for reasons that go into the plot. I have to say that I really love how they handled Carrie Fisher in this movie, the late lady's passing. There is a send-off for her. Maybe not as much there as they would have liked to do under ideal conditions, but considering the circumstances, they definitely did a very nice job. It was certainly a beautiful scene all the same. Excuse me. And just on a technical level, it is very convincing. Whatever wizardry they did to take the deleted scenes from Force Awakens and Last Jedi and alter them to insert Carrie Fisher's archive footage into the new movie, it is seamless. It is incredibly astonishing. It's not like this kind of uncanny valley thing that there was over the digital Peter Cushing in Rogue One. Ironically, the digital Leia in Rogue One never bothered me, and that was in some ways a harder effect to do because it was a close-up and it was in a very well-lit space. Nothing struck me as being as belonged to a different movie than the one I was seeing in the theater that night. So, this is very, very nice work. At the very least, the effects guys definitely deserve an Oscar just for that work alone. Not so nice stuff. I think I've said in other videos that I basically view the J.J. Abrams directed movies in particular as being very expensive fan films, in the sense that there's a lot of nostalgia just for nostalgia's sake, and they tend to remake or at least very strongly reference the previous movies quite a bit. Force Awakens was definitely guilty of this. Last Jedi pushed its luck a little bit, it was not quite as severe, and unfortunately Rise of Skywalker goes back in the direction of Force Awakens, and that this one kind of very strongly knocks off Return of the Jedi at times. And this is part of the reason as well why I was not really looking forward to the Emperor coming back. As much as I like Ian McDiarmid in the role, frankly, he's been done to death. I was already very sick of him. And as creepy as he was in this movie, frankly, his character is exactly the same as it was in Return of the Jedi. There is nothing new here. And as much as I didn't really like the prequels all that much, this is an area where I will defend them. Even though the Emperor was in all three of those movies in some form or another, at least there was something new that was being brought to the table. It wasn't just a rehash of sit in the throne, taunt the good guy, and threaten to blow up the fleet. Whereas we're doing this exact same gag in Return of the Jedi, and it's even more, as in Return of the Jedi, I mean, and it's even more grain considering that the same thing was just done in The Last Jedi with Snoke and Rey. I mean, I do like J.J. Abrams a lot as a director, but I really think he works better when other people write his scripts, because he does not seem to be especially good at. Now, again, maybe this was affected in some way by a no doubt very rushed schedule, owing to the Colin Trevorrow controversy that I mentioned. But I'm not exactly sure. This is too similar a situation to what happened on Force Awakens. I can't really be sure that some of this is on Abrams himself. Something that I have never quite understood with any of the sequel movies is how exactly the First Order got to be as big of a threat as they are, considering that they basically started out as this ragtag group taking on the legitimate government. I mean, ironically, they were sort of the underdogs in this series on paper, in a similar position to where the rebels were in the classic movies. And yet, for some reason, they have the ability, and they have this massive space fleet. they have a command ship that is as big as New York City, basically. They figure out how to build a massive planet-killing weapon into a planet itself. And how exactly the Emperor/Sith was able to build this fleet of what looked like 1,000 ships and maintain them. That includes feeding and clothing and arming everybody on board these ships without anybody noticing them or finding what was going on even a little bit suspicious, is never explained at all. And I'm sorry, but even for space fantasy, my bullshit meter goes way off when I see that. And this is where I sort of see the point of the bashers who think that Disney has sort of killed the Star Wars movies. Now, I won't go quite that far, but you really do get a sense that Disney sensed the commercial potential of these movies, given the track record of Star Wars as a franchise, and just decided to phone it in. They treated it with the most amount of cynicism possible, just churned out whatever product they could year after year, like clockwork, probably trying to compete with Marvel, which is a little bit weird considering that Disney owns Marvel as well. And basically just figured, okay, Star Wars is such a big property, that these things sell themselves. You can turn out anything you like and slap the Star Wars name on it and everything will be fine. To give them credit, the prequels kind of proved that point. However, I think by now the fans are kind of savvy to that act and they're just getting sick of it. Certainly the box office failure Solo proved that very well. I've been hearing mixed response about the attendance of the Star Wars theme parks at Disneyland, Disney World. If somebody can clarify that for me, if you please do so in the comments. But yeah, Star Wars is not as bulletproof as Disney previously thought it was, hence why they're backtracking on a lot of their previous plans now. And I haven't had a chance to see the Mandalorian series because I'm not a Disney Plus subscriber, but I have been hearing a lot of good things about it. Hopefully their television projects going forward continue that momentum. And honestly, as far as Star Wars movies are concerned, I really hope that they just leave it. This sequel trilogy, overall, it hasn't been excellent. I mean, on a technical level, they've blown the prequels out of the water. I mean, they've been better acted, they've been better shot, they've been at least had better dialogue. But in terms of story, they are just not bothering a lot of the time. And I mean, that's why with the sequels, I just think, I don't mind that I saw them once, but I don't care if I see any of them again. I don't think. I just think that this series and everybody involved in it, especially the actors that have had star-making turns over these roles, deserve a lot better. And I hope that going forward they get a lot better. But Star Wars, I think, is run out of steam and just deserves to go away quietly. That's it for me. This is Boy on the Corner signing off.